Hi, how you doing? Welcome to Coffee Chat with Angie. I'm Angie, and yes, I'm transgender, and yes, I have a very masculine voice, but hey, I'm just doing the best I can, just like everybody else. Oh boy, just like everybody else. Here we talk about eco-friendly ideas fighting against the shitstem of the bully dozer. Hello, how you doing? Okay, yeah, so episode 43, 42, 43. I'll put the right number up here. Um, like they always. Okay, so anyway, yeah, so well, I've been trying to switch from my thus far on the Spiral Times. I've done everything just on my phone, but I'm trying to change it so that I do it on my laptop. So this is right now I'm filming it on my laptop. So that's why I've changed my background and everything, and redid my intro, and I've just kind of changed everything. This new camera, new everything. I don't know. It's the thing. A lot's happened. It's time for a change anyway. It's spring 2025 right now. So that's kind of like the spring cleaning notion and everything, you know. So yeah. So this episode is about Lucifer, the subject of Lucifer and the war in heaven, and Michael and Lucifer. So I mentioned that in the last one, and so this is also about fact checking and everything. So after the last episode, the previous episode, I said, hey, you know what? I'm gonna fact check myself, and I googled, Lucifer, Michael, the war in heaven, and googled these things and checked it out, and because it could be kind of confusing because I grew up with a Mormon mother who taught me all of my original concepts, like anybody else, and she's a Mormon and a conservative Republican. So I was set out to, you can picture, Pinocchio going off to school and being set out to school. Okay, bye, Pinocchio, come back, you know. So again, Pinocchio goes off to school, how do you pause that? Okay. So that was the first time I ever pushed pause. Like I said, this is my first episode. I did do a little anyway. You don't want to hear it. And I'm getting too far off subject. So basically, what I came up with was the reason why I brought up my mom and Mormon is because it can be confusing because like the Mormon church is basically a cult, and like they teach you things, and then they teach you that, just that whole us and them thing, this is the truth, and everybody's, and you already know all that stuff. So sometimes it could be confusing what everybody understands. You might assume something that you were taught is something that everybody thinks, about something, and that would be true with me and Michael and Lucifer, because so Michael and Lucifer is like a chapter 12 of the book of Revelations, the last book in the Bible, so it's the New Testament, and it's supposed to be, it's the apocalypse, and the whole concept of Jesus coming again, and if you believe in the rapture and all that, just all that, and it was supposed to happen according to experts within the next generation. So it's been, every year, the apocalypse is going to happen again this year, and it's like, oh my gosh, you still expect me to care? Like, you've been wrong like every year my whole life, and it's like, it's going to be really bad this time. So I was taught that Michael and Lucifer was a question of free agency. That Michael said, let's have free agency, and Lucifer says, no, we can't. We have to enforce everything, because then some people will go to hell, and we can't bear the thought of someone going to hell. So he had good intentions, in that kind of a way. but I can't find any reference for that. I've read is that when I read through the Bible, that was one of the things that I was looking for. I've read some of the Apocrypha and some of the pseudepigraphical works, and have listened to videos and asked people and everything, and I just can't reference that. As far as I can tell, that's just something that the Mormon Church teaches, really. But I wanted to know, like what I basically did another deep dive, and I've already done this a handful of times in my life. Like I said, I mean, my mom taught me, so that's like age 7, 8, around there. So like, it's been on my mind, because it's like the Michael and Lucifer thing is supposed to be, and it's just a mythology, I believe in science and evolution and all that, and it's like, it's just a mythology. But it's like, remember when you were in elementary school, you were like, why are we studying Greek mythology, and it's because it was like an original religion where the language and everything comes from, and it's just a relevant thing. It comes up all the time and everything. And indeed that's true. I mean, wow, it's super true. It's even influenced the Bible and stuff. If you listen to the experts, it isn't long before you hear them say things like that. I mean, the New Testament was in Greek, right? So what the Bible experts say, by the way, about Lucifer is that Satan, Lucifer, the devil, and the serpent in the Garden of Eden are all really just separate things, and they just kind of people keep corresponding them to this same concept, and everything. But like the snake in the Garden of Eden was not Lucifer, nor was it Satan, according to experts. So you look it up yourself, and all that. So Lucifer is just a mythology, and this is the mythology of that, and that's what this video is about. But the reason why it is a question of free agency. It is a question of free agency, and it is a question of morality policing. So here's why. Because, like, for one thing, it's like the people, they're all, no, it really happened. It really, really happened. It's like, dude, okay, like, what really happened? They're like, okay, there was all these angels floating around on the clouds with these big wings. Or, nuh-uh, they weren't really wings, one person would say. I believe they were wings. I don't believe they were wings. That's just a symbol. A handful of them would say amongst themselves. And it's like, guys, come on. It's a mythology. Can't you see that? I mean, if the experts probably know what mythologies when it started and influenced it and things like that. It's like so stupid. Why do you have to relearn the same? Anyway, it's a mythology, it didn't really happen. But the reason why it's so relevant and so important is because it is the root. It's the mythology about the root of the battle of good versus evil. But it's the devil on one side, because there's no God in the sky. God is just Yahweh, fire, water, air, and earth, the Tetragrammaton, YHWH, Yod, He, Vav, He. That's the basic Kabbalah, the Sefer Yetzirah, and I go over that a lot. That's a core on this channel, and it's the same. One of the pathways in the Sephiroth is the devil pathway, and it's because the devil's inside. So there's no devil and there's no God. Those are it's all just connected, and we're all connected within, and so it's really just the story of the battle of good versus evil, of the war in heaven, and the beginning of that is really just it's just our inner realm, where we connect, because that's where Jah is in our heart, where we connect within. Yod-He, Vav-He, Yahweh. I am that great I am, I will be what I will to be. The burning bush is your body, It's basic metaphysics. So anyway, so what happens is we're all one within, and what ego is, and transcending ego and the need for meditation is to separate your ego to become one, and what ego is anything that separates you from the whole, So all the angels on the clouds and everything, everybody, they were all one, and there was, Lucifer was the smarty pants, like the billionaire, the rich one, the powerful one, the influential one, and I've got an idea, everybody, and everybody listened to him, and he took that power and he went and after a while it became a lie, but he kept lying about it anyway because of what it had become, and he was willing to take things out that way. So that's why it's said that he rebelled against God, because God was this oneness that we were before that, and then he separated himself away from that, to do that. But like I'm not a Luciferian. Luciferians believe that the story is a little bit mixed up. Lucifer's made out to be the bad guy for the sake of that someone needs to be the bad guy, and an antagonist, and someone needs to be the good guy, the protagonist, So they've just kind of put that on this whole thing, But like, I'm really a Rasta, so like, Bob Marley's a rebel, I'm a rebel, so rebel, and the concept of being a rebel, the rude boys and the rebels and the Rastas of Bob Marley's generation and stuff. How can you be a rebel and the good guy if the rebels are the third of the host of heaven that rebelled against God? And really, that's where the story, I think, got mixed up, because the original rebel is Michael, because the original idea was Lucifer. Hey, come over here, and people are like, yeah, that's true, and he's like, oh yeah, you bet it's true. Yahweh, YHWH means Yahweh. Not really, but you might say that because Yahweh came way after probably all this and stuff. I don't know how that all works. You'll have to look it up and ask the experts. But as far as the mythology, because I'm a witch, so I'm not a Christian, so I just use these symbols and these mythologies in my witchcraft. A lot of witches do that, So I'm just interested in the mythology and the deity and what it's become at this point, And so all these things, it has a life of its own, So anyway, so Yahweh's plan was like, hey, we don't need to be over here with everybody. We can be over here. We can be anywhere because Jah's just within anyway. Let's come over here and let's start our own thing over here and do this thing and all that, and we don't need them, and we can do that and this because Yahweh, YHWH, the Sefer Yetzirah, just like I said, come over this way, and that was a separation from the whole. And then Michael came from the whole, and he says, no, that's not true, so that you can't. To rebel, there has to be an idea you're rebelling against. So before Lucifer, there wasn't anything to rebel against. So the first rebel really is Michael, because he rebelled against his idea and said, no, we should all just be one, And Lucifer is over there, dictating to everybody what everything should be and morality policing. And no, there's like how many religions on this planet, and but no, yours is the right one, like the Christian nationalism, authoritarianism, dictatorship, hey, this is the truth and it's just a fact, and no one can agree with me, or no one can disagree with me, and all this, or they'll be killed, and all, and it's that whole mentality, that morality policing mentality that I've been talking about is Lucifer's mentality. So Lucifer's made out to be this person that's like all free loving, hey, do whatever you want, we're rebelling against God, we can do whatever we want. No, he was an authoritarian. He was like all, because he had ideas and everybody was convinced of it. If it was a total rebel thing, people would say, no, we're not going to do that. You know what I mean? So it was a good idea, and it was based on truths. But the lie was that you had to come over here, and that you were better, the elitism of it and the over here, because no matter where you are, there you are. You don't need to go anywhere, and you don't need to be separate, and that's just ego, you know. Let's just keep things, you know, unity and diversity, and keep everybody together. You know, everybody doesn't need to be the same puzzle piece, you know. And you know, so you can see there that, see there that the free agency is with Michael, you know, because Michael's saying no, we were fine before, and then you came over there and said this is the right way, with all these good ideas and half truths and all this stuff, you know, and all that you know, no, you know, Michael, you know, and that's the war in heaven, you know. It takes two to tango, you know. But I believe that Michael is on the side of free agency and democracy and, you know, and oneness and unity and diversity and you know, so that's why I believe those things, you know. So it was originally because my Mormon mom taught me that. That's what I was originally taught as a young child, but I kept my eye on the whole thing and thought about it all these years and everything. And I just did a recap recently, and I in fact checked it all on Google and said, made sure, am I sure I know about all this stuff, you know? And so that's why I did this video, you know. So I don't believe in morality policing. I do believe in free agency, and that's who Michael is to me, and that's why I'm so into Saint Michael and everything, and why he's important to me. Because, and I think that sometimes people get that. Sometimes I see these accusations of Michael out to be the bad guy, and I've studied, like I've said, you know, I've studied a lot of religions. I studied Luciferianism a lot. Luciferians are awesome. You know, it's fun to be with someone, you know, in a conversation with someone that's actually educated on what they're talking. Christians can be so like oh my head, can be like Lucifer, can't they? Like, the more Christian nationalists and far right they are, they're like, sure, they're right, and they're not even right, even from a Christian perspective. A lot of the time, it's like, holy cow, you know. Anyway, that's another video for another day. So, yeah, that was just my little rant and my first video on my laptop. That was pretty cool. Okay, you have just listened to another video by The Spiral Times Presents. Thank you.